Railroads are often overlooked in modern warfare, but on August 19, 2025, one railway line became the center of gravity in a battle over logistics, fuel, and strategic reach. Ukraine waited for the right moment, tracked every signal and movement, then executed a strike that not only destroyed a Russian fuel train, but also disrupted the supply lifeline to Crimea for nearly a week. What unfolded was a precision ambush using drones, intelligence layering, and calculated timing, an operation that illustrates how modern warfare is increasingly defined by logistics, surveillance, and unmanned systems rather than massed firepower. At 8:01 a.m. on August 19th, a Russian fuel train consisting of 30 wagons advanced toward Crimea. Russia had few options left for transporting fuel south. Road convoys were being intercepted and struck, while sea routes were compromised by Ukrainian naval drones. The railway had become essential. For Moscow, it was the only viable channel to move large volumes of critical supplies. But this dependency created vulnerability, and on this particular morning, Ukraine exploited it with precision. The train drivers continued their journey unaware that their movement was being tracked and analyzed. Overhead and from the ground, a network of Ukrainian intelligence systems had already locked onto the train's telemetry. Moments later, waves of bomb-laden drones would descend on the train, targeting not the steel or armor, but the volatile cargo inside. Ukraine's intelligence preparation was meticulous. Operating in a zone where visibility for unmanned systems was limited, Kyiv built a layered monitoring structure. Signal strength could be concentrated in this area, allowing for guided drone attacks despite Russian attempts at electronic countermeasures. The intelligence network combined multiple data sources: optical and thermal satellite imagery, commercial synthetic aperture radar, SAR, data, listening devices, and electromagnetic reflection analysis. Together, these inputs produced a hybrid intelligence map capable of identifying, tracking, and predicting Russian logistics patterns with high accuracy. By cross-matching optical imagery with thermal scans and layering in SAR packages, Ukrainian operators penetrated camouflage and signal jamming. At the same time, station-level GSM traffic was intercepted and locomotive telemetry was captured, revealing the train's expected route and timing. Signal intelligence was reinforced by analyzing secondary supply schedules, giving Ukraine the ability to predict the train's passage window to within minutes. The convoy's estimated speed was recorded, and the interception point was carefully marked. UAVs were then deployed in 3 distinct segments: a targeting segment, a dive strike wave, and a third echelon dedicated to signal backup and return sabotage. The chosen strike platform was the Maluk V2, a modified kamikaze drone built to withstand high temperatures and maintain structural integrity under stress. Each Maluk V2 had a range of 210 kilometers, guidance capability across both GLONASS and GPS signals, and encrypted data links using AES-128 protocols. They also included a satellite-based recall algorithm. Each drone weighed approximately 5 kilograms, built from polymer materials, and carried a low-density explosive charge designed not to destroy armored targets directly, but to initiate fuel ignition. With a shockwave velocity of 9,000 meters per second, the explosive was ideal for penetrating tanker walls and triggering secondary detonations. The concept of attack was not to destroy the train with direct explosive force, but rather to turn the cargo into the weapon. Ukraine classified these as self-igniting targets, where drones served only to initiate the reaction. The real destructive energy came from the fuel itself. This meant a relatively small investment of drone munitions could create a chain reaction with exponentially greater destructive power. The timing of the attack was calculated against the daily train schedule. On the morning of August 19th, only 2 crossings were expected. The first, a civilian cargo convoy, had likely already cleared the line before dawn. The second was the targeted train. Departing from the Tokmak Regional Control Center, its destination was southward toward Urozhain. With 30 wagons in total, the train carried approximately 150 tons of liquid fuel. The first 6 wagons carried aviation fuel, The middle 12 carried diesel, and the remaining 12 held blended industrial fuels. The locomotive itself was a TE-33A diesel unit, capable of 100 kilometers per hour, powered by 12 cylinders delivering 3,300 horsepower, meaning the train was not only a transport vehicle, but also a massive kinetic object in motion. The attack began as the train entered one of the most congested and difficult to access stretches of track. This limited the ability of Russian rapid response units to intervene. The first Miluk-2 drone dove into the 14th wagon, one carrying diesel fuel. The explosive penetrated low into the car, and the internal pressure caused the diesel vapors to ignite. Within seconds, flames spread. Roughly 7 seconds later, the adjacent 13th car, carrying aviation fuel, reacted violently, triggering the first chain reaction. The second wave of drones struck the 16th and 17th wagons, positioned toward the rear half of the train. The resulting blast intensified heat and shock effects, splitting the train into 2 sections. The front 13 wagons derailed and came to a halt, while the rear 17 remained on the rails but quickly became engulfed in flames. Heat levels rose so high that concrete sleepers beneath the track began to crack. At 620 degrees Celsius, the steel rails lost structural integrity and began to bend under thermal stress. The third drone wave struck the 4th wagon, another aviation fuel container. The detonation displaced the locomotive's body, lifting its front wheel set off the tracks. The engine compartment bulged outward under pressure. The entire strike sequence lasted 6 minutes and 48 seconds. In total, 7 drones were used, each conducting a single precision strike. By the time the attack ended, approximately 312 meters of track were destroyed. Confirmation came swiftly. Ukraine's armed forces released an official statement, while video footage from the attack circulated in international media that afternoon. Recordings showed massive fireballs, structural deformation of tracks, and towering smoke columns. For the first 90 seconds after the attack, the scene was dominated by fire and smoke, with flame columns measured at 27 meters high. Within 3 minutes, fire had spread along 200 meters of track, bending 40% of the steel rails. Dry vegetation in the surrounding area ignited, creating secondary fires. The spread of flames was accelerated not horizontally, but by vaporized fuel creating drooping, pressure-driven flames that directed the blast downward and along the railway. Miluk-2 drones were not only strike assets, but also reconnaissance tools. Each carried low-resolution thermal cameras in their nose sections, transmitting real-time thermal maps back to Ukrainian operators. This allowed for post-strike assessment, including identification of wagons not yet destroyed. Although a follow-up strike was technically possible, none was planned for this operation. After transmitting their data, the drones self-destructed, preventing capture. The attack also disrupted Russian communications. Electromagnetic interference generated by drones caused a complete blackout in the area for nearly 10 minutes. Russian security units protecting the train were unable to contact their logistics command until 12 minutes after the initial explosion. This communications collapse compounded the physical destruction, leaving the response paralyzed in the critical early moments. Firefighting teams were delayed. The first 2 trucks from Tokmak could not approach closer than 1 kilometer due to extreme heat. Only specialized military fire control vehicles were able to reach the site, arriving roughly an hour later. By then, the wagons carrying diesel and aviation fuel had been entirely consumed. The fire continued for nearly 3 hours before subsiding, leaving behind 6 secondary blazes caused by flaming debris. Damage assessments revealed that rail steel tensile strength, normally rated between 540 and 620 megapascals, had been reduced by 40% under heat exceeding 750 degrees Celsius. This meant the rails had to be fully replaced. At least 400 meters of track were deemed permanently unusable. Concrete foundations had also been destabilized by 12% due to thermal shock, requiring deep engineering reconstruction. Signaling cables had melted, demanding at least 4 days of repairs before communications could be restored. In practice, the line remained closed for 6 days. The immediate operational effect was the suspension of Russia's primary supply artery into Crimea. Road convoys could only meet about 17% of the daily volume required, far below operational needs. The destroyed train itself carried 150 tons of fuel, enough to power a mechanized division for 3 to 5 days. 6 wagons of JP-8 jet fuel alone represented over 100 potential helicopter sorties. Its destruction meant reduced air support and canceled missions. The financial balance was also striking. 7 Maluk Viv-2 drones cost approximately $266,000. The train's cargo was valued at $2.5 million, but its operational impact far exceeded monetary figures. By crippling a logistics train, Ukraine delayed battalion movements, postponed armored vehicle shipments, and slowed artillery resupply. The disruption forced Russia to hold an emergency military council within 12 hours, initially misattributing the strike to local sabotage until satellite and social media footage confirmed a precision drone attack. Russia's ability to adapt quickly was limited. Alternative supply routes by road were insufficient. Sea transport was already neutralized by Ukrainian naval drones. The result was a bottleneck in Crimea lasting at least 72 hours, during which Ukraine exploited the stalled supply buildup by launching follow-up UAV strikes on vehicles massing near Crimea's northern exit. The drones' low altitude, flying below 40 meters, and small radar signature made interception nearly impossible. Their ability to alter flight paths until the final seconds further reduced Russian defenses. After the strike, Moscow announced plans for 17 new radar stations along the route, but these would take months to build, leaving the railway vulnerable. In summary, Ukraine turned a logistics dependency into a vulnerability. The strike destroyed 150 tons of fuel, disabled 400 meters of double-track infrastructure, severed Crimea's lifeline for 6 days, and imposed cascading delays across multiple units. For a cost of less than $300,000, Ukraine inflicted millions in material losses and imposed operational paralysis on an entire front. The psychological effect was equally significant. Crimea's supply network, once assumed secure, was now proven exposed. This was not just the destruction of a train, it was the disruption of an entire logistics chain, a demonstration of how small unmanned systems, combined with layered intelligence, can neutralize strategic infrastructure at low cost. It was an asymmetric strike with maximum impact, altering not just the battlefield tempo, but also the psychological balance of the war.